Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I have another quilt block for you. This one is called Folded Star, and here is my block. It is made with a square and a square unit in the center. We have quarter square triangles and half square triangles. So there are points that you need to watch to keep from blunting them off, and you have some points here in these corners that you need to match up. So I would call this an intermediate block. But either way, I hope you will give this block a try. So I hope you'll stay with me, and I'll show you how to make the folded star block. Okay, here are the fabrics you're going to need to make the folded star block. For A, you're going to need one 4.5 inch square. B is 4 2.5 inch squares. C is 2 3 inch squares. D is 2 5.5 inch squares. E is 4 3 inch squares. F is 2 5.5 inch squares. G is 6 3 inch squares, and H is 4 2.5 inch squares. So we have quite a few pieces, and we're going to make half square triangles, quarter square triangles, and a square unit. So this one is going to take a little bit more time because of the units and the number of pieces. But anyway, I'll adjust the camera and we'll get started. Okay, we're going to make two different sets of half square triangles, and the first set is going to be the C and the G squares. So I have my C squares and the G squares, and then the second is going to be the E squares and the G squares. So we've got two different colors here, and we're just going to do them right sides together, and I've drawn a diagonal line on the wrong side of all of the G squares, and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away from both sides of that drawn line. And I'm going to chain piece these all together just to speed things up a little bit. And I'm just going to go ahead and add the E squares while I'm at it, so we can get this all done at one time. Okay, and I'm going to clip these all apart, and then I'm going to cut them on the drawn line, and I'm just going to use scissors, but you can use where'd my scissors go? But you can use your rotary cutter too if you want. So this will give me 2 half square triangles for each set. And these need to be trimmed down to 2.5 inches. So I'm going to trim mine before I press them using a Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. You can also press them first and then trim them down just using the 2.5 inch mark on your ruler. And if you have a 2.5 inch square ruler, that will be even faster. So I'm going to trim these and then press, and then we'll sew them together into 4-patch units. Okay, here's my trimmer A for the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer, and I'm just going to line the stitch line here with the 2.5 inch mark on my trimmer here and then trim any excess fabric. There we go. And now it's down to a 2.5 inch triangle. And then when I press this open, it will be a 2.5 inch square, and I'll just need to trim off the dog ears. Okay, so now we need to make some 4-patch units, and we're going to use H squares and these half square triangles. So I need to sew an H square to 4 of these triangles. So I'm going to pull 4 of them out, and the H squares are going to go this way, like this. So I'm just going to go ahead and stack them all up. So that will be the first part, and then this bottom part is we're going to sew the rest of the half square triangles together, the 2 different colorways. So we'll have, these are the C and the G triangles here. They're going to go here, and then the rest of the E and the G triangles will go here. So this is the square we're going to make. So these 2 seams are going to have to match up, and so are these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to repress these triangles so that the seam is going towards the background instead of the darker fabric, and that way these seams will nest on both sides. So I'm going to sew the H squares to the EG units, which are the darker fabric for me. Okay, so now I need to sew those EG and the CG half square triangles together like that. So I've got them all laid out, and I'm going to nest the seam, the diagonal seam down there, and then sew these all together. Okay, let's clip these apart. And so these units look like that. So I'm going to press these, and then they are going to be sewn together to these units. Okay, so now I'm going to sew these 2 sections together. We'll have the 4-patch unit. So I need to match up this diagonal seam and the seam in the center, and you can pin these, or you could finger pin them. Just make sure you have your raw edges lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and pin all of these. I think it'll make it go faster in the long run. Okay, so now these need to be pressed, and we can move on to the quarter square triangles. So anyway, this is what this unit looks like now. Okay. Okay, now we need to make quarter square triangles, and we're going to use the D and the F squares. And the F squares are going to have a diagonal line drawn on the wrong side. I used 2 different fabrics for my D squares because I could not get 2 5.5-inch squares out of a 10-inch square piece of fabric, so I just used 2. So you can do that too. And I'm going to place these right sides together. The first step with making quarter square triangles is to make half square triangles out of your pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch away from that drawn line on both sides. So now I'm going to cut apart on the drawn line of both pieces here. And then I'll press and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I have all the pieces pressed, and now I need to make the quarter square triangles, and what I'm going to need to do is to draw another diagonal line on the wrong side, and this is going to go perpendicular to the seam. So I'm going to match the like pieces together. So I'll have 2 sets like this, and I'm going to draw a diagonal line on here. So I can put this where you can see it. And just grab any straight edge you've got. This is my Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. And so I'm going to grab one piece that's from the other set, the different color print, and draw that line. Okay, now I'm going to take the matching piece, and then I'm going to place them so that opposite colors are meeting. So background to print on both sides, and I'm going to nest this seam together, and I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in there so it won't shift, and make sure all of those seams, that seam is nested really well. And now I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away on both sides of that drawn line. Okay, now I'm going to cut this apart on that drawn line. Okay, and now I have a 1/4 square triangle. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sew the other set together, and then we'll trim these down and then press them. Okay, I'm going to go over and trim these down, and I'll move the camera over there so that you can see how that goes. So here's the other 1/4 square triangles. Okay, so I have my pieces here, and these need to measure 4.5. So I'm going to line up the seam with the perpendicular line here, and this seam is going to go on the 4.5 inch dotted line here, and that will get me a 4.5 inch 1/4 square triangle. And on these, it's really important that you line this up with your seam, otherwise you're going to be off, so it won't look, you'll just have to redo the whole thing. So go ahead and do this side. So here we go. There's my 4.5 inch half square triangle. So when I press, then I will trim the dog ears off here. So I'm going to trim down the rest of these, And then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so now we need to make the center, which is a square and a square unit, and that's going to require an A square and the B squares. And on the B's, I have drawn a diagonal line on the wrong side, and I'm going to sew on 2 opposite corners first and trim and press, and then sew on the other 2 corners. So I'm going to sew from the top center to the right center. And now I'm going to do the opposite corner and do the same thing. Going from center to center. Okay, so let's trim, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And now I'm going to press. Okay, so that's what I have so far. And now I need to sew on the other 2 corners. And 1 more corner. Okay, trim and press 1 more time. Okay, so here we go. Got the square and a square unit done. So now we can lay out all the pieces and then put the block together. Okay, so I have all my pieces here. My 1/4 square triangles, square and a square, and the 1/2 square triangle units. So the square and a square goes in the center. The 1/4 square triangles are going to go on this side. So I have 2 different prints, so I'm going to put them opposite each other. So we're going to go like this. And the background is going to go towards the center. And then the 1/2 square triangle units, the background square goes to the outside, so it's the outside corner. So there we go. So now I just need to sew them into rows and then sew the rows together and the block will be done. So I'm going to sew the first 2 pieces of each row together, and then I will add the last piece of each row, and then I'll press and then sew all the rows together. Okay, I'm going to pin all of these rows together and then sew them together. So I'm going to nest the seams. I've got them pressed in opposite directions so they'll nest well. ahead and pin this end. Okay, here's the finished block, and I think it turned out pretty well. This isn't really too difficult of a block, but I would not call this a beginner block because you do have points that you have to watch to keep from blunting off, and there's a lot of pieces in this block. So I think this would be a good one to try if you're really confident with doing half square triangles and square and a square units, and even these quarter square triangles. So if you're comfortable with that, then I would say give this block a try. Okay, that is it for the folded star block. So this one turned out pretty well, and this one's a little more complicated because you've got a lot of pieces and you have points to match, and I didn't have any fabrics that I needed to watch direction on, so that helped. But if you're a confident beginner, this is a good one to try. So we have lots of color in here. There's 2 shades of pink, 3 shades of blue, and then we have a focal piece in the center. So anyway, I hope you'll try this block. Now, if you like this video, please click that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.